just returning from the Liz Phair concert tonight at the Holland. We literally just left there about a half an hour ago, raced home, got right on the online, and started doing our reaction here. Wow. So what are your thoughts? I mean, I'm still kind of absorbing the whole thing.
Yeah, I gotta say, I mean, it was totally satisfying is my first reaction. It was like I just walked out feeling like I got exactly what I wanted, plus a little more. I thought it was overall fantastic. But I will say I kept thinking about the book.
I did
like
too,
the
a little
things
bit,
that we learned in the book, like she called out the timing of things so much. Like it was like she acknowledged that she's like, getting back into this album and thinking about who she was when she wrote it. And she made a comment about like, yeah, she, probably wrote a bunch of those songs like after going out and getting home drunk and writing them in her bedroom,
No, it was, I mean, it was just in general, it was really, really good. And I made the comment at the venue that Exile and Guyville 1.0, the original back in 93 versus Exile and Guyville 2.0, 2023, she's much better as a performer now than she was back then, 100-fold. I agree. She's a confident performer. She sings really well. Her voice, excellent.
Yeah, I agree. I noticed that she was a lot more confident. You and I had talked about how we could understand some words we'd never understood before because she was articulating
I wish
them
I could
better.
remember the examples, but there were at least 2 times where I was like, oh, that's what she was saying. Because I always thought it was something else, And it was really fun because I think most of Liz's career she has spent trying to run away from Exile and Guyville. Like she had this big album, it was kind of defined her, and then for the rest of her career she's been trying to run away from it, and now she's finally embracing it and is like, okay, everybody said this is the best album I made, people love it, instead of just pretending like Fun Style is better or whatever, I'm just going to embrace the fact that this is what the fans want. And it was great. Everybody in that whole room, all of Holland, was like enjoying it and was vibing on it and was just like, oh man, singing along to all the songs. And it was like, that was their, I mean, it was their night. I mean, I don't know. It was a really good show, and her band was tight.
Oh man, let's talk about her band for a second, because
first
they were fantastic.
They were very, very good. And not only that, but like when they played some of the quieter Exile and Guyville songs, they made them new kind of more rocking arrangements that were actually better.
Yeah, they did. It reminds me of like, you don't think of Death Cab for Cutie as a particularly rockin' band, but when you see them live, it's like, holy shit, they like jam,
They're a very good live
and
band.
I had that same feeling that, it was like a bigger experience in person, and that band was phenomenal. The drummer especially impressed me. That dude could hit some drums and was crisp as hell, but they were all super talented. Did any part of you, Dave, were you surprised at all that it was an all male backing band?
No, because Liz Phair is that complicated type of feminist, like we talked about in the review of her book. And it would be too like typical for her to come out there with like an all woman band or whatever. She doesn't play that game. She's going to do it her way. I think she likes the comfort of the male musicians. I don't know that for a fact. I'm just guessing. I mean, but she, to my knowledge, she's never had a woman in the band. She's always had an all male band. I don't know if there's a reason for that. Maybe she's just more comfortable with that. Maybe she just likes the look of it. Her being in charge of these guys, like she's the boss. Who knows? I mean, I honestly don't know, but that wasn't super surprising. No, I mean, the surprising part was, that she put on an actual show, right? Like, so last time I saw her was at an outdoor festival. It was in the middle of the day. So they don't put on, there's nothing visual. It's just her up there performing. And it was very good. Mm-hmm. This had the visuals. It had all of that stuff. Like it was really a good performance. He calls you back, sooner to anyone. He calls you back.
liked, though, that she acknowledged that this was a part of my life that was a long time ago. I think sometimes when bands have an iconic album, you just think that that's always them as an artist, right? And I think she made a point of demarcating the time. So she was like, welcome to the 90s. And then at the end of Guyville, was like, here we are back in 2023. And then during the encore was making notes about like, let's get married, and then played Polyester Bride. And it was interesting because it just reminded me so much of how she wrote the book.
Yeah.
That there's like capsules that are demarcated by her music. And really, I think it is important to remember that Exile and Guyville is not her entirety as a person, not then, not now.
No.
But it is phenomenal, and
it's such a career defining record and a 90s defining record. It's one of those records of the decade, and you just can't, even if you might maybe prefer White Chocolate Space Egg or something like that, you can't. Guyville was such a signature achievement.
Yeah.
That the Rolling Stones might not feel like Exile on Main Street or Sticky Fingers is their best work, but everybody else does, right? So you have to acknowledge that the fans decide ultimately what your pinnacle is, what your best is. Now the problem is when you have a classic artist who's been around for a long time, whenever they have something new, people inevitably want to compare it to them at their pinnacle. And I don't think that's fair, because you should really be comparing it to what else is out there at that moment. And then people would be much less harsh on older artists' new material if they weren't comparing it to their absolute best. And like I predicted, although I didn't think it made the cut in our book club video, that when she played those early 2000s hits like Extraordinary and Why Can't I, crowd got going. They were into it,
She ended on Why Can't I? And honestly, I was like, this is great. I knew she would.
Yeah.
It's pretty
I knew
obvious.
she was going to play that one. I didn't know about the Extraordinary one, the song Extraordinary, which is where I stole that like average, everyday, sane, psycho, super.
Yes.
Okay. Like that's where I stole the line, but I didn't know she was going to actually you play that song. And she did, like,
I like that song.
I'm glad she did those two songs. Would I have preferred maybe an extra one off of White Chocolate Space Egg or something like that? Maybe, sure, but whatever. I was happy with it. I don't hate those songs. My reaction now to that period of her career is a lot less harsh and judgmental than maybe it was back then. Like I just absolutely rejected it outright when it first came out. And now I look back on it, it's like, those songs aren't so bad. I mean, like, Extraordinary is a pretty good song. And I don't even mind the message behind it. It's like pretty positive, and Why Can't I? That's a little bit more kind of cheesy in the lyrical perspective, but like, I still think it's a good song, though.
Well, okay. So I think that the Liz Phair of Exile and Guyville is still in those songs. It's just that there are fewer minor chords and more bridges. They're constructed more like pop songs.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like, for instance, I was really glad that when she sang Why Can't I, that we got the rated R version and not the PG version. So there's a line in that song where she says, we haven't fucked yet, but we're going to get to it.
Yeah.
But on the PG version, I think she says talked.
On the 13 and from the soundtrack to 13 and 30, they cleaned it up for that probably.
Yes. Yeah. That's it. But that's quintessential Liz Phair, a line like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's still her, but it's just industry polished. It feels like a little bit.
It's a different presentation, and it's a different era. Exile and Guyville was 1993, and when that song came out,
there
it
were
was like
so many more minor chords in 1993.
Yeah,
in all of the 90s.
It was just different, and that's the thing. Everybody put Liz up on that pedestal because they love that album so much. They wouldn't let her move on to other things. They didn't want her to. And there's that double-edged thing of like, okay, so an artist, you want them to change and always do different stuff, not do the same thing all the time. But then when they change, people bitch and say, well, I don't like this new stuff. if you do the same thing all the time, then it's why do you always do the same thing? Why can't you change it up? So it's sort of like the Strokes as a great example. They came out with this amazing album, their second album, carbon copy of it. Okay, people like it, but then the criticism was, why does this sound exactly like the other album? So then the third album is totally different, and everyone's like, this sucks, doesn't sound like the Strokes.
If we're talking about criticisms, can I offer the one criticism I had of the show? And I hesitate to say this because it truly was a fantastic show. I love the shit out of Liz Phair. I would see that show again and again. And when we get off of this, I'm probably going to put on Exile and sing the shit out of it. But I recall the moment in the book where she talked about how she's learned how to present herself. She's learned how to dress up and deliver the things that are expected of her. And which I think is a really important insight that people don't think a lot about with musicians or performers of any kind, that they have to have that kind of persona and that it takes work. But that said, when she was singing Gun Shy.
Okay,
so
that's when she was walking around the stage.
Yeah, so she put down her guitar. It was her and the other guitarist only on stage. She grabs the mic and she, did a pass along the whole front of the stage. And the way that she did it, though, it was like she would say like gun shy and like sing it like out to each part of the audience, but in a very, to me, performative way. Like it didn't feel natural. It felt like this is the plan for this song. It just felt staged a little bit. And like, I feel like she is 100% more comfortable than, the last time I saw her was, I think, in the late 90s.
Yeah.
She was still like, getting her sea legs in terms of, stage performances. And this was very confident, but maybe just not quite as settled in as some other performers that I really love.
I think I don't remember the second example that you were talking about, but the first one with the gun shy, I didn't see it as, I definitely saw it as staged and performative, but I think it was awkward because she's not comfortable without the guitar in front of her. Like she's a performer with a guitar, and that's something blocking you.
Yeah.
And you're standing there and behind a mic stand and whatever. And when you're out there just with a handheld mic, you're just, you're exposed. You're right out there. I think she's just not that comfortable with it. So it looked kind of weird because I did notice that too. Like it seemed a little bit kind of forced. And I think she was trying to make herself more of like a performer that does that. But that's not a natural thing for her, clearly.
I think let's
what did you
and talk about the venue that she was in. So she was at the Holland Center in Omaha, Nebraska, and this is a beautiful, beautiful building with some of the best acoustics in the nation, or at least when it was built, that was the case. It's fairly new, but it was a seated event. It's a place where the symphony plays here.
Yeah, it's not. It feels like a place that you would want to see the symphony, not a rock and roll show for sure.
Yes. So it was a different experience than you would expect to see Liz Phair. But it was kind of funny because there were these three people that stood up and they were in the maybe first or second row, but nobody else was standing. And they had a little bit of an interaction with her and it was pretty awkward. And then security came over and said something to them and they sat down. But then like a second later, they were back up.
Yeah, I thought I saw something like that, but I wasn't sure. And so I didn't really understand what was going on at that because there were some people in the back that would stand up and dance and stuff. And it's like, it is a concert. Are they really making you sit down? Like, I didn't know that.
Well, I think the problem was not with the standing. It was the talking to her.
Oh, that they were trying to interact with her because
yeah.
Okay.
Because I imagine that could really throw somebody's game off if they weren't expecting to be so very close to the audience.
Well, and not only that, Omaha crowds get super silent in between songs. Like when the song ends, everybody claps, quiet.
Yeah.
And then until the next song starts. She made a comment about it too, about how she kind of likes that or whatever, but it is unusual. And Omaha does that in every context. It's done
I've
that
never
at
noticed that
arena
before.
shows. I've seen it at the waiting room. I've seen it at every place. People just silent. And then
God,
it's the
that's
next
so
song. So people
lame.
are just like, oh, okay. I mean, it's weird, but you get used to it. So I could see that because, yeah, it did get so silent. She could have heard me talking from where we were sitting. If I'd have yelled out,
Yes.
Liz Phair, whatever, she would have heard me. So if they're trying to have a conversation with her, which is stupid, leave her the fuck alone. I mean, she's on the stage. I love people who are so presumptuous. They just think, well, I'm up there. Liz she likes talking to me. No, she doesn't. Okay.
Yeah.
She's performing. Like, she doesn't want to have a conversation with you right now.
Yeah. Yeah. She's kind of got a job to do.
Yeah, she's a little busy. And then there's the rest of us back here who don't know your dumb conversation and don't care. Ugh.
Also that. Yeah. So true. Let's talk about the background though. So
Okay.
she had the coolest shit running in like a film made up of a collage of actual footage of old show photos of lots of Chicago scenes, the Rainbow Room, also works of art. It looked like paintings or drawings. It made me wonder if any of that was her actual artwork, because as we learned from the book, she's a visual artist.
She's a visual artist. Well, she did thank somebody during the concert.
She thanked a group of people at the end
for doing the visuals. Yeah, but maybe it was based on some of her stuff. I don't really know. I guess that's something we'd have to look up. But
yeah, I was curious.
It did look really good. I mean, I think when I haven't had a chance to look at my photos yet from the show or the video. But it will, I think, present really well. I think the photos look good because those lights were really good. It was a cool show. Presentation behind it. I wasn't necessarily following the theme or whatever she was trying to present. I just was like, oh, it looks cool. It was a good visual.
I think I think a lot of it reinforced things from the song. I mean, not super literally all the time, but I'll tell you one thing, and I wonder if this is intentional. It took my eyes off of her a lot.
Yeah,
because it was really cool and always changing and if she, wanted to take eyes off of her, she succeeded. I still watched her, of course.
Well, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I that wasn't my issue. I definitely was mostly just focusing on her for the most part. But I noticed enough to notice that the visuals were cool. And
also in this venue, it's decorated for Christmas. And you could they were sheer enough that you could see the giant wreath. And you're like, oh, no, I'm still in the place where the symphony plays.
Yeah. Yeah.
Coolest shit art happening here, but I'm still in this joint.
And also that place, the way it's designed, the ceilings are so high. It made those curtains look almost small. Like I bet in most theaters that looks bigger and takes up more of the stage, but here
it's probably floor to ceiling.
It's
in some
like this, and the ceiling was like way, or it'd probably be better if I did it this way. But anyways, you know what I mean? There was just it was so tall that it did make it look kind of small at times. And maybe that was also part of it, but it did sound really good in that room. And
I mean, the sound was incredible.
Yeah, the sound was great. And
although I have to say, her vocals were turned up pretty high, which is understandable. But I just kept thinking about Jen, and I think she would have died of a stroke or a heart attack. She would have been ear muffing because she's not a fan of Liz Phair the way that we are, and I think she would have keeled the fuck.
Well, but I mean, some of the more rocking arrangements of some of the Exile songs might have been a little bit more to her.
She would have been into that, I bet. Yeah,
and I actually think
the voice part, I know, grates on her.
There are some people who don't like Liz Phair, whose criticism is that her voice can at times seem a little monotonish, and I don't agree. I think she has a great range, and I like it, her singing voice. But on Exile, it did have a little of that sort of thing. Not anymore. Like when she does a lot of those songs, she does present them in a little bit more songy way or whatever. I don't know.
I noticed that too.
Without removing any of the edge or the coolness of the songs, she just sang it in a more mature, I'm not 22 or whatever. I'm 55 or however old she is or whatever, She's the spokesperson for the mom jeans or whatever it is that company, so she's a different world. So she has to do stuff differently. That's makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, again, you could tell that she's matured vocally, that she's matured as a performer, and grown a lot. And I would say all in a good way from my experience with it.
Yeah, and it is, it's a good thing that we did that book because we kind of tried to do it because it was timing with the show, but at the same time, it got me reinterested in Liz Phair because I did, and I said this in the other video, like I did sort of view her as in the rearview mirror as part of my past. And now that I got back into it because we read the book and then we did the video and now I've seen the show and it's like, yeah, I'm kind of back into Liz Phair again. Like I'm I don't know if I'm the same as I was in 1994 or whatever, but I mean, I'm much more enthusiastic. I'm sitting there listening to Liz Phair now and in the background there, and probably will be for the next couple of days, I would imagine.
Yeah, same. And in fact, I think I'm going to give her later works a more of a listen. I've listened to them, but yeah, the last couple I think I'll probably dig into a little bit more.
Yeah, the most recent one, Soberish, had some good moments. I didn't hear it all the way through, but she got back with the producer from Exile and Guyville. And they worked together again for the first time in like forever. And,
I didn't realize that. That's
it was
cool.
pretty good. I mean, I like I said, I only heard a couple of songs, but they were definitely better than Fun Style.
Yeah, the Fun Style I'll probably go ahead and skip. I'll definitely be listening to her for the next week. And I have to say, the only thing that I'm really pissed about is that she ended with "Why Can't I?" and now that goddamn song is stuck in my head again.
I mean, the second the little I was like, oh, okay, here goes.
Yeah,
the song.
You and I looked at each other like we knew this was coming. Yeah, but it was a fantastic show, and it did take me back to right where I was when I listened to Guyville. The first 70,000 times I listened to it in the 90s, and
I think that was the same with the whole crowd. She took the whole crowd back to that time. Everybody just seemed to be really vibing on it, and there was no, you didn't even have to be like, well, it was good for 30 years later or whatever. No, it was just solid, great.
It was.
I mean, she is better now as a performer than she was originally when that album first came out. I can state that firsthand.
And she's a pro, like she talked about in the book. She takes, it very seriously. It's business. She shows up on time. She doesn't miss gigs. And, we had found out that she was going to go on at 8:40. And wouldn't you know, 8:40.
She walked right on there. Yeah.
I mean,